please email, my dear friend. Please email, and I'll give you a complimentary copy of this ebook. Please email. You need to learn. You haven't got a clue. Haven't got any evidence.
Maybe I'll email. But let me pose you a question.
Sure.
Right?
One last question.
Okay. Do you believe that we're all descended from Adam and Eve?
We all descended. Yeah. That's the only perfectly explicable explanation as to why we are here.
Okay. Evolution can explain why people.
Evolution is nonsense.
No. Evolution can explain why people have different skin colors, because people who have darker skin usually grow up in hotter, sunny climates, where they might have been more at risk of things like skin cancer and whatnot. So they evolved to have more like
Okay, my dear friend, I need to stop you here.
Well, that's the right.
Hey, look. If you were to give me that story, and if you're going to make Hollywood movie, I wouldn't invest a penny in that.
I think it's very eloquent.
No. You are an eloquent man. No, even if you're Shakespeare, which you very well might be, even if you're Shakespeare, a story which doesn't have meat is a story which doesn't have meat. And that is your problem. Your problem is not that you're not a Shakespeare. Your problem is that your story is non-saleable. My point is this. You told me evolution can explain the difference in skin color. Give me one bit of detail, but you need to give me detail, not story, not fancy ideas. Give me one process in nature which can explain why human beings have a skin to begin with, please.
I don't know. Again, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a biologist.
That's why we got a skin.
Well, look. I need £1 million to survive today. No one is giving me £1 million.
No, you
So
don't
that's
need
because
a
I
million.
need something.
No, you don't need £1 million.
Okay, maybe not a million, maybe £10,000.
Why would
Maybe
You don't even need that.
Look, all
I don't
that
know. I don't
no
think
one
there is
giving.
a God,
Just
to be
because something is needed, it doesn't show.
it just
That's
seems a bit
Lamarckism, by the way.
a
That's not the
far-fetched
theory of
idea.
Darwinism. That's Lamarckism.
you believe in any sort of
My dear
spiritual
friend,
reality?
my dear friend.
Not really, to be honest.
Your idea
I mean, I don't think
we
loads
have
about
what
it.
we need is not Darwinism.
Just devoid of nothingness.
That's not evolution. That is
I mean, well, what do you mean?
Lamarckism.
Well, we have the world. That's not a void of nothingness.
So you believe in human beings?
I guess so. Well, what do you believe in?
His
I believe in human
ideas
beings
did
too.
not
I
fly
believe
off
in
the
God.
wall.
It's not.
Giraffes,
What religion are you?
his ideas did not grow. He was discredited, thrown in the bin.
I'm not.
Only Darwin survived. Until
I believe in God.
nonsensical universities.
Who discredited him?
Oh yeah, Lamarck. Have you heard of Lamarck?
There's not that I'm a Christian.
Yeah, sure. But have you heard of Lamarck?
And I can believe in evolution.
No,
which
you
makes
can't.
sense.
No. If you're a Christian, you need to believe
No,
it.
no,
So
no,
you,
no.
sir, you earlier were siding with a Muslim. Why so?
Why so? Because quite hilarious, quite racism. I asked you the question, are you Hindu? Of course you're Christian. Why do I side with them? Because of paganism.
What do you mean because of paganism? What are you talking
The
about?
reason I asked if you were Hindu.
No, why did you side with the Muslims?
No, I wasn't.
You didn't.
I wasn't taking the side.
Yeah, sure. But you were cracking some jokes and so on. Islam is a horrible religion. Do we agree?
No.
We don't?
I disagree with that.
Okay. How much of the Quran have you read in your life?
Not much.
In other words, you are ignorant and you disagree. You want to disagree. On what basis?
I'm not ignorant to the
If you don't know the Quran, okay, you haven't read the Quran, so
I'm
how?
not claiming to be a Muslim.
But please listen.
Yeah.
I asked you earlier, do we agree Islam is a horrible religion? You said no.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay, maybe I got it wrong. Do you have a position in relation to Islam? Do you think Islam is a legitimate religion?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So in other words, you do take a position in relation to Islam. So I'm asking you, based on what knowledge do you take that position if you've never read the Quran?
I've read the hadiths.
Okay, you've never read the Quran, you've read the hadiths. Which hadiths have you read?
Shia ones.
Shia ones. But what details did you read that makes you think Islam is a legit? No problem.
I do not claim to be learned in the subject.
I didn't
I've
ask
got
you
many
no.
friends
Whoa.
that are
So
different types of Muslims.
Did I ever say that you are? Did I say you have to start a university soon?
You call me ignorant.
Well, when you haven't got a clue and you still not showing any clue.
I haven't-
You are ignorant, so please don't be offended.
Maybe I'll take your email. Maybe I'll read your book. But that will be just wasting time, in my opinion.
Excuse me, sir. You are shaking already. Please stay focused, my dear friend. You need to stay focused. What I am saying is, let me be honest with you. The only reason I am challenging you is this: there are many millions who are walking on the walking in our country today, walking around. Anytime we speak about Islam, they come in defense. Oh, Islam! Oh, you're a racist. You're this. You're that, and so on. And what I am finding with all of those people, they are clueless. They haven't got a clue. They can't explain why we have terrorist attacks in our nation. They can't explain. They can't explain why hundreds and thousands of people are being killed by Muslims across the world today. They can't explain why nations such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nigeria, northern part of Nigeria, Iran, Iraq, all over the world, in many, including in my places such as Malaysia and Indonesia, which are meant to be a little bit more advanced, non-Muslims are persecuted severely. They can't explain. They don't care. They couldn't get, whatever. They are deeply irresponsible, seeing all these wicked acts, and yet being entirely clueless, but standing here and saying Islam is a legit religion. I consider that to be deeply irresponsible. You're pretty much like, someone stands and murders someone, you haven't got a clue as to what happened, and you show up there and say, the right for the murderer. That's not good.
Surely you can separate the religion from extremism.
Sure, you can. If you are able to, based on information, which you don't have. Do you have any information to tell me Osama bin Laden is a bad Muslim? One second, let me finish. Let me please finish. Let me ask you a specific question and answer. If you can't answer...
What's the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter?
Please,
Answer me that question.
Okay. In other words, you now will rant on. You're clearly clueless, but you wouldn't mind. You're a typical lunatic.
Terrorist has no moral values.
Doesn't want to learn, wants to argue, defend the defenseless. I'm going to ask you a poignant question. You are entirely right. I agree with you. There might be a way to differentiate a terrorist from a non-terrorist Muslim. I'm going to ask you, yes, clearly there are people who are already engaged in terrorism and there are people who have not yet engaged in terrorism. Completely agree. I'm going to ask you, but according to the Quran, who is a Muslim, who is a better Muslim and who is not a good Muslim among these two?
In my personal opinion,
No, according to the Quran. No, your opinions don't matter. Look, you don't know. Right, that's why. In other words,
Do you think-
clueless but want to defend. Please, my dear friend,
Do you think one
my
of-
dear young man.
Do you think one of
One
God's
second, can I please-
messengers? I'm just going to answer.
No, one
Do
second,
you
one
think-
second.
no,
Sorry,
one-
let me
one-
wrap up and then
no,
you.
no,
Let me
no,
wrap up and then you.
no,
No, that's fine. If you don't want to continue
Do
the
you
conversation,
think-
that's fine. I'll
do you
move on.
think-
But please
do you
don't
think-
spread and
Do you
defend
think God's
ignorance. Please don't.
messenger,
Thank you very much.
if he'd been God's messenger,
right, dear
would have had
friends.
sex with a 9-year-old?
Time to leave Islam. While it is still sunny and we have time to leave Islam, please do quickly before it is too late. Leave this utterly ridiculous junk. If you have Qurans in your homes, pin them. They are utterly useless. They make people
I'm
go
not a
mad.
Christian, and I don't believe in evolution.
They
You're not, you
lead
believe
to
it,
severe mental
so why don't you
issues.
believe in evolution?
Severe
I believe
mental
the earth is
damage,
flat.
brain damage.
Because what?
Because I believe the earth is flat.
And I can demonstrate that to you right now by
Okay.
saying that there are many
Why
Muslims
do
who
we
are
put up
here
satellites?
who
Balloons.
will come so
No,
near
satellites.
when I make
The
specific
satellites.
points,
Yeah.
Then
but
why
they
do we
won't
put
have
up
the
satellites?
courage
Why
to
do we
move
put up
further,
satellites?
closer.
Why
The
do you
reason
put
is simple.
communication
We
stuff?
didn't send them into space.
These are
they're
people who
hot air-
haven't got a clue about
So if I got
religion.
Sky TV,
Too much brain
where does it
damage.
get the signal from?
hot air balloons.
Islam is a murderous death cult.
So why don't the
Islam
balloons move in
is a
space?
Nazi,
I don't want.
Why don't the balloons
genocidal
move in space? Because
cult.
Gravity doesn't exist.
fascist cult.
God is dead and we have killed him.
okay.
Islam
So why do things
Well,
fall to Earth
totalitarian-
if gravity doesn't exist?
don't care
Density.
about giving you rights. For
Density.
example, if you stand
What's
in
that got
Mecca
to do with
today,
that?
and if you say anything bad about
If you're
Islam,
underwater, for example,
take it as
Yeah.
a guarantee.
you're at a different density. You could say, for example, that gravity acts differently underwater. that's a conundrum.
Well, it does, yes, it does. It's
In the
not
sense of
conundrum.
totalitarianism
It's
meant to
because
be
there's
a
more water
wider
pushing
version
down the depth.
That's exactly what
And why
density
does
is.
and
That's
why does
exactly what gravity is.
and why does
Same
water
version.
push down the
You
depth?
know, it's a
Because of
quantified,
gravity.
Because of
Because
density.
of gravity.
I swap. So
100%
gravity
nutcase,
is God.
brain
God
damage
is dead,
region.
and we have killed
To
it.
an extent,
Density is the
because-
devil, and the devil lives.
See, I'm not
If you
being
take this
silly, but
fold
you
its
see,
paper
with the
somewhere,
flat Earth,
and showcase that to
there's
someone,
so many
you know what
people that would have to be in on this conspiracy.
that-
It's
that's
unreal.
maybe the starting point. You know where it'll all lead you to.
And
Ultimately,
you know, it's like
I'll tell you.
when they built the
There is a
Humber
gentleman,
crossing.
there was a gentleman in Sweden.
Not when they built the Humber crossing.
Forget his exact name. Salman.
Two
Mohammed
towers, or the towers on either
came
side of
from
the river.
Syria, who fled Syria, being someone who
The tops of
criticized
them,
Islam,
from side to
and
side
he
across the
went to,
river,
Sweden.
a quarter of an inch further apart
refuge
than the bottoms.
Sweden.
They had to build that into the design. And do you know why?
This is junk.
Because of the curvature of the earth.
Because
I
the
would have said
curvature
use
of the
this as
earth.
toilet tissue.
Valid
He-
point. It's interesting.
But I
Have you
would,
heard about
because I've read this and I think
if you've got a certain
the
type of Nikon
paper
camera,
you can use,
that
but
you
not
can
the content
zoom in
inside.
across the horizon,
burnt
and
the
see
Quran.
beyond the horizon.
when he
Sorry?
burnt the Quran.
I've heard people say that when they sail
They call
into,
that the Coriolis effect.
I've heard
That
a
light
lot,
can bend through curvature.
Shot him to
light does bend through curvature. It's
shot
when you
him
get
just
sporadic
a
E.
couple of months ago.
It's like when you get sporadic E.
What if I was to say to you, it's
Draw
both
a little bit,
round
try this here.
and flat
If you like
at
it,
the same
but
time,
don't try it.
depending on what people believe. That
Take a
belief and
paper,
thought is so
draw
powerful
something,
that we are
and
in a
call that
holographic
Muhammad.
matrix
See what happens.
simulation.
Well,
Nutcases,
I
all
would
these,
say
you
that
know,
most
both
they
can be
appear
true.
like they're educated
This statement
people.
is false.
You know what's going
What
to happen.
statement's
They
false?
appear, they have all suits
Think
and
about
everything
what I'm
else.
literally
They
saying.
show up at
This
speaker's
statement
corner
is false.
and they appear like they are
As a
educated
sentence.
people. But they can't stand
paradox.
a simple
No,
There's always a
no, it's not a
paradox.
paradox.
where you
It's
think that
nonsense.
you're drawing someone.
It's not
It
nonsense.
it doesn't make.
This
beloved
statement
Mickey
is
Mouse
false.
Muhammad.
Look into
They'll kill
quantum
you.
physics.
Does this sound like totalitarian? Does this sound like
I looked up a
fascism?
little bit of quantum physics,
It broke
but
physics,
when you were
right?
saying, about
No, please don't make
about the
wrong
camera,
decisions, my dear friend.
light does bend. Light does bend as it goes to different mediums.
I am telling you,
It's
very
like when that sun sets and goes down over the horizon, you see it for 7.5 minutes after it's gone down.
How to hate
Because what happens is as the sun's rays hit the upper layers of the atmosphere,
Muhammad, if you want to read what place
they bend as they go through denser and denser mediums. The light rays bend. It's like when you get a rainbow.
how you behave here.
Different
Speaking
than,
of bends and rainbows, what's your position on homosexuality?
what's my position?
We wouldn't do that
Well, I'm
even
gay,
with,
so
with our king here.
And you're a Christian.
I'm a Christian,
And
yes.
you can put your faith with your sexuality.
Absolutely.
In other words, no
Absolutely.
wonder they want to
There's
protect
the
What
vegan.
type of Christian are you?
because without their nasty protection, of course, he's going to go down the drain.
Well, I was Christian into the Anglican Church.
So you were baptized.
This is
Yeah.
serious brain damage. This is brainwashing, brain damage.
And
I wasn't baptized, my parents were baptized.
Okay, and I chose to be baptized. It wasn't a decision my parents made. In fact, when I was baptized, I walked into the church,
And how old were you?
70.
Here,
And before that you were an atheist.
even here,
No, before that I was a Christian, but I just wasn't baptized.